Hi everyone, it's Paul from Alexander Knife Sharpening. In this video, you get to watch me make the correction to this knife. I'm taking that large swale out of this chef's knife for a customer. And I'm starting here by working on the very front of the knife. Now, I found that the best way to take swales out is to lower usually the front of the knife to get it to match up with the rear where that big swale is, where you can see, which is usually caused from just using the knife, and also sometimes customers sharpening their own knives that will cause that swale in the rear there. I am currently working on this is a pretty aggressive Cubitron belt. I have a 80 grit Cubitron in here. Now typically I will use a 120 grit Cubitron or a 180 grit Cubitron, but I have so much metal that has to be removed on here to make this knife the proper orientation that I went to an 80 grit because it's really just is going to need a large amount of material removed. So I'm continually checking and looking. Now I'm working on the bolster area a little bit, so the rear will need to come down too. It actually had like a low point, but then the bolster was kind of high, which is pretty common too with customers' knives. Most of them don't have the ability to lower their bolster. So what I'm doing now is checking that swale. I'm looking for light showing through. That is a jeweler's block, and I will put the knife against that. It's a rubber block, and that helps me see where that swale is and where I need to keep working on that knife. And just same thing here, continuing working on that front tip. You'll also see me, I keep touching the knife, and that's checking for heat to make sure I'm not overheating the knife, that it's not getting too hot. Now I'm working on the front area, which is going to be a little thick, so I'm thinning out that front tip and also still working on lowering that front of the knife to get rid of that swale. Now I'm working on the rear of it. And once again, checking to see if that swale is now gone. So once again, checking to see if the swale's fully gone. And you can see it's looking a lot better. No light showing through. That's what I'm looking for there. I'm looking for light shining through. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking a Sharpie and I'm just marking a couple areas I want to focus on to really get it perfect. So I want to take a little bit more out of the rear there, and a little bit right here in the middle. And that's why I'm marking that, so that I can just kind of focus specifically on removing metal from those areas. And you can see I'm just taking short little strokes, working on those specific areas that are a little high to even this knife out even more and get rid of that swale. Now I'm working on the bolster, lowering that. And what I'll do often when I am doing corrections to a knife like this, sometimes I will raise up the angle off of the angle guide so that I'm actually removing more metal than when I'm sharpening. So I might make like a 30-degree angle, which is going to remove a lot more metal and then I'll go back in and recut the bevels. But by going to a 30-degree or more angle, it helps speed up that process of making those knife corrections. Now I'm checking again. Showing the camera. So now I'm moving on to sharpening. This is a 600 grit Trizac belt, and I'm feeling for a burr. Had a burr, so I went right to the other side, checking to see if it feels sharp. Doing a little more work on the bolster area. It's a little fat there in the rear of the knife, so just doing a tiny bit of extra work there. And that's it. I'm happy with that. Now I'm moving on to a 1200 grit Trizac for the final sharpening. And sometimes you'll see a little glint of area that you can tell needs a little more work. And so I'll look for that little reflective area where I can tell it hasn't been ground down enough. And, not uncommon that I'll do a little extra work on the tip. So now I'm moving on to polishing. This is a 220 grit dental abrasive. I'm holding this up just so you guys can see it a little bit better. I normally like to put it in that magnetic mount I have on my vise there, but I am just polishing that bolster with the dental abrasive, which takes out scratches and really makes it shine up real nice like it's new. This knife had a ton of scratches in it. I think the customer said it's close to 30 years old. So you can see it's very scratched up there. We're not going for a perfect, complete refinishing, but I am going to take a good bit of these scratches out. It's a Wusthof. It's so old that you can just barely see where it says Wusthof, but I did avoid removing any of the maker's branding marks on there. It's up in the top portion, but it was barely visible anyway on this particular knife. But I'm just once again working that bolster area a little bit, and then working on just trying to improve the overall general appearance of this knife, which had quite a few scratches in it. So just continuing to polish this knife. Flipping it over, working on the other side. Again, working the bolster. And then working on some of the just general scratches that are in the knife. And when you work with the dental abrasives, they will, as it polishes, it does sometimes leave what looks like a unevenness, but it's actually a haze, almost like a dust that forms there, and you have to kind of wipe it off as you go. And so now I'm just working on some of the really bad spots where there was a couple real deep scratches on here. And like I said, I'm not trying to get everything out, just trying to improve the general overall appearance of this knife. So now I'm using Flitz polish, which is one of my favorite polishes to use. I'm just going to rub that in, and then I will buff it off on a jewelry buffer. And Flitz is great. You can use it on plastic, so it can go all over the knife, not just the metal, but it can go on the plastic handles as well. And it does a really nice job of polishing everything. So now I'm just polishing up here on the jewelry buffer using the fine buff. Now I'm using it in with the blade facing me. Now on my large buffer, I would never do that. That could be kind of dangerous. It could grab the blade. But the jewelry buffer, I feel pretty comfortable turning it around like that. But on a regular high-speed buffer, I would recommend that you're always kind of blade down. I'm just very used to using this and can kind of do it in both directions safely. But you should be very careful using buffers. They can kind of grab you and throw your workpiece at you. You should always kind of grind or polish from the kind of the middle portion facing you down, and you always want the blade down. But that's one of the reasons I like the jewelry buffer, since it's not as powerful as like a full-size buffer. I can do things with it that and polish in ways that wouldn't necessarily be very safe on a larger size buffer. So there, I'm just showing you how the polished knife looks. And now I'm actually honing it, because if you remember, we sharpened it, but we never finished the final step here. So I'm now just honing the blade for the first time. And then what I will do next is just bring it over to the best tester to do a test on it to see how it came out. And there I'm checking the how sharp it feels. I'm going to do a cut test. Let's see here. Yep, and hopefully I did it so the camera can see. Here we go. So I'm doing a push test. It's pushing right through the paper, as you can see. And then I'm doing a slice test. There's your slice. And if it can push and slice, it should be very good. Alright, so now I want to just take a look at the bevel and the edge under my Tomlov scope. And you can see that looks beautiful. That's a beautiful new edge there. The little fibers you see there are just from me wiping the blade off with a rag. Little fibers will get stuck there on the very edge. And now I'm coming over to my table where I have my best tester to do a final best tester score. You'll notice I push very slowly through the monofilament line. You should see the numbers scroll up just like it's doing. And we got a 150, which is absolutely fantastic. So this knife is razor sharp, and it is good to go back to its customer. And there you can see 150. Well, thanks again for watching this over my shoulder video, and I will leave links to many of the items that you saw in this video in the description of the video. Have a great day, everybody.